Hello everyone, welcome to my update US gossip channel. The courtroom was tense, a charged atmosphere that seemed to suck all the air out of the room the moment Kody Brown stepped through the doors, flanked by his attorney, his expression a mixture of disbelief and resignation, knowing that today's proceedings could very well rewrite everything he thought he controlled. Across the room, Mary sat with a composed exterior, though her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the edges of her chair, the betrayal still raw in her eyes, the memories of years spent trying to maintain peace now flashing like lightning in her mind, while Janelle, radiant but fierce, refused to let the heartbreak show, her posture rigid, her jaw tight, every fiber of her being ready to fight for what she believed was owed to her, and Christine, sitting quietly in the corner, her eyes sharp and calculating, seemed almost detached yet somehow unstoppable, the kind of calm storm that had always unnerved Kody more than any argument or confrontation. And the bailiff called the court to order, the gavel striking with an almost ominous finality, echoing through the room like the heartbeat of the drama that was about to unfold, and as the lawyers shuffled papers and whispered hurriedly, Kody cleared his throat, his voice betraying a hint of defensiveness as he began to speak, explaining, or perhaps justifying, the fateful decisions surrounding the Coyote Pass property, the sale, the distribution of assets, and the agreements that, in his mind, had been reasonable, fair, and above reproach. But the reactions from the women told a different story, each silence, each raised eyebrow, each barely concealed sigh a testament to the growing storm of resentment, hurt, and betrayal, and Mary leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she recounted, in quiet but cutting detail, how she had been blindsided by financial maneuvers, by promises that had been broken, by the subtle ways in which Kody had manipulated circumstances to favor one party over another. And the camera captured every flicker of emotion, the rise of anger, the sting of disbelief, the ache of past wounds reopening, while Janelle, with a calm yet steely precision, read aloud passages from emails, messages, and recorded conversations, her voice unwavering but heavy with the weight of evidence, each word a dagger aimed straight at the heart of Kody's carefully constructed image of fairness. Christine sitting silently but keenly observing, occasionally whispering something to her attorney, the courtroom rhythm pulsing with tension as the legal teams exchanged documents, objections flew like sparks in a dry forest, and the judge, a figure of authority, banged the gavel again, demanding order, though the emotional undercurrent was palpable, so thick it was almost a physical presence in the air. And then came the moment that would define the entire proceeding. Kody, perhaps thinking this would quell the rising tide, confessed, his voice trembling slightly as he admitted to decisions made in secrecy, to deals struck without full transparency, to moments where his judgment had been clouded by favoritism, and the women's reactions were instantaneous, a mixture of shock, vindication, and heartbreak. Mary's lips pressed tightly together as tears threatened to fall, Janelle's eyes widened in disbelief, then hardened in resolve, and Christine's slight smirk hinted at the silent satisfaction of having seen the truth finally surface. And as Kody tried to explain, to contextualize, to soften the blow with justifications rooted in his perspective of family dynamics and logistical necessity, the tension only intensified, for each excuse seemed to unravel further the fragile trust that had been stretched to its limits over the years, while flashbacks of family meetings, whispered conversations, and tense negotiations played across the viewer's mind like a cinematic montage, reminding everyone how long this web of misunderstandings, grievances, and favoritism had been quietly growing. And then came the testimony from financial experts, their dry, factual statements painting a stark contrast to the emotional upheaval, calculating exact losses, profits, and the true value of the assets, their numbers cold but undeniable, and the women, particularly Mary and Janelle, nodded subtly, each calculation confirming what their hearts already knew, that Kody had, whether intentionally or not, tipped the scales in ways that disadvantaged some and enriched others, leaving deep scars in relationships that had once been presented to the world as harmonious, united, and devoted. And the camera lingered on close-ups of the wives' faces, capturing micro-expressions of disbelief, pain, anger, and, in Christine's case, a quiet triumph, the kind that comes from witnessing a long-suppressed truth finally laid bare. And then, just when the room seemed to teeter on the brink of explosive confrontation, Kody's attorney attempted to steer the narrative back toward reason, to soften the confessions with legal language, references to precedent, and appeals to mitigating circumstances, but It was too late. The court, the women, and even the observers sensed that the veneer of control Kody had maintained for so long was cracking irreparably, and the discussion turned toward the consequences, the redistribution of assets, the public perception, the future of family dynamics, and even the reputational fallout for Kody himself, with each point sparking quiet murmurs, occasional gasps, and the kind of tension that makes viewers at home clutch their couches, hearts racing, as if they were in the courtroom themselves, trapped in a drama of epic proportions. And as the hearing dragged on, emotions ran high. Mary finally broke, tears streaming down her face as she recounted personal moments where she had felt unseen, unheard, and unvalued, while Janelle, with a voice steady but loaded with emotion, demanded accountability not just for herself, but for the children, for the family legacy, for the years of hidden inequities that had quietly eroded trust. And Christine, ever the strategist, offered a calm, measured statement that, while brief, carried the weight of undeniable clarity, highlighting her awareness of Kody's mistakes while asserting her own role as a responsible party who had navigated the chaos with integrity. And just when it seemed the tension could not escalate further, the dramatic twist of the day arrived. A surprise witness, a close friend of the family, stepped forward with knowledge of private conversations, confirming suspicions that had been hinted at for years, and the revelation rocked the courtroom, sending shockwaves through Kody, his legal team, and even the wives, each processing the implications in their own way. Mary with a mix of validation and sorrow, Janelle with vindicated anger, and Christine with the kind of quiet satisfaction that comes from watching truth finally surface. And as the judge called for a recess, the room buzzing with whispered analysis, tense glances, and the kind of silent accusations that linger long after words have been spoken, the camera panned across Kody's face, capturing every flicker of regret, defensiveness, and dawning realization that the carefully constructed narrative he had relied upon for years was crumbling, while the women shared private looks, subtle gestures of solidarity and understanding, silently acknowledging that while the courtroom drama was far from over, the power dynamics had shifted irrevocably. And as the episode progressed, flashbacks highlighted the personal toll. Late nights spent worrying, strained conversations in living rooms, children observing tensions they could not understand, and the slow, painful erosion of trust that had quietly defined the family's story for years. And then came the final testimony, emotional and raw, each wife taking her turn to voice her perspective, to assert her truth, and to make Kody confront the real consequences of his actions. And as the gavel finally struck to signal the conclusion of the hearing, there was no grand applause, no cathartic relief, only the quiet, heavy realization that lives had been irrevocably altered, relationships tested to their limits, and reputations forever changed. And the final moments lingered on Kody, alone in the courtroom, a man forced to face the fallout of decisions he had once thought benign, while Mary, Janelle, and Christine left with a mixture of sorrow, relief, and cautious hope, their confessions, strategies, and resilience having secured not just justice in the courtroom, but a hard-won clarity in the tangled, emotional web that was the Brown family saga, leaving viewers stunned, emotional, and utterly captivated by the shocking final verdict, the betrayals laid bare, and the fall of Kody Brown, exposed like never before. As the gavel echoed, signaling what many thought might be the end, the tension in the room refused to dissipate. Kody sat back in his chair, running a hand through his hair, the weight of exposure settling heavily across his shoulders, and for the first time in years, the carefully polished mask of confidence cracked, revealing a man wrestling with guilt, regret, and the stark realization that every choice he had made, every negotiation, every secretive decision, had consequences far beyond what he had anticipated. Across the room, Mary wiped at her tears with the corner of a tissue, her breathing heavy. But beneath the raw grief was a sense of vindication, a quiet confirmation that she had not been imagining the imbalance and favoritism that had haunted her for so long. Janelle, her arms crossed, glanced sideways at Christine, who offered a subtle nod, a silent message of solidarity that needed no words. The women, united in their resolve, were no longer playing roles dictated by Kody's whims. And then the judge, sensing the storm that had been unleashed, leaned forward, his expression both firm and compassionate, reminding everyone that beyond the numbers, the legalities, and the contracts, the human toll of these decisions was what truly mattered. He spoke slowly, deliberately, ensuring that each word landed like a hammer, that accountability was not merely a formality, that the Brown family's story, long public, long scrutinized, would be forever marked by this reckoning. Flashbacks surfaced across the episode like cinematic shards, showing tense family dinners, hushed phone calls, and whispered confrontations, each memory layering onto the present courtroom drama, reminding viewers how long these wounds had festered. Kody's mind raced, revisiting moments where he might have done things differently, pondering whether transparency could have prevented the spiral, whether listening more deeply to Mary and Janelle could have saved trust. Christine's calm presence, however, reminded him that some truths, once revealed, could never be undone. Her poised but sharp commentary had been a consistent thread throughout the day, ensuring that the facts, not just the emotions, remained front and center. Then came the most emotionally charged moment, a private confession, captured on camera in a small side room during a court break. Kody, speaking to the cameras but also, it seemed, to himself, admitted his fear of losing control over the narrative, acknowledging that his desire to protect the family had blinded him to the emotional needs of his wives. Mary's eyes, watching this confession, softened ever so slightly, recognizing the humanity, the flawed intentions behind his actions, yet the pain remained undeniable. Janelle's quiet voice off camera offered a mix of admonishment and cautious hope, reminding viewers that while betrayal had occurred, there was still space for rebuilding, but only if accountability, honesty, and respect became the foundation moving forward. As the day drew to a close, the final verdict loomed like a storm cloud. Kody, humbled, silent, and forced to face the consequences, contrasted sharply with the women, each strong, empowered, and unafraid to claim their voice, their truth, and their share of justice. The cameras lingered on their expressions, capturing tears, relief, and a glimmer of cautious optimism, ensuring viewers knew that while the courtroom had decided one aspect of the Brown family saga, the real story, of healing, reckoning, and redefining relationships, was just beginning. And in that tense, quiet moment, one thing was undeniably clear: the fall of Kody Brown was complete, the betrayals were exposed, and the Brown family would never be the same again.